Hey guys, Ben from Shape the Metal here. I just wanted to do a quick overview of one of the newer planishing hammers from Woodward-Fab. This is the WFPL28. 28 because it's got a 28-inch throat depth. They do also do a 22 or a 25, I think it is. We don't stock or sell the smaller one. The main difference between the two, they've both got the same air motor on them, but the frame on the 22 or 25, I think it is a fair bit lighter, and I just feel that it's a little bit too light for what we're trying to do with it. So we offer the 28. I personally think it's a good planishing hammer for the money. We've had a bit of mixed feedback on it, and I just wanted to cover a few of those things that have poked up and a couple of other things, and go through and just clarify where this planishing hammer is positioned. The first thing that's come up, which has been a bit mixed, some people have the issue, some people don't, is a leaky air pedal. And we get this across a few different brands, and I think it's related to the way that the pedals are wired, the way that the air inlet and outlet are connected on them from the factory, and sometimes they seem to get it right and sometimes they don't, and I don't know why, because it should be pretty straightforward. But let me just grab the pedal. The first thing you'll notice is that I got rid of the big yellow foot guard on this pedal. Reason being, I find it doesn't fit. My foot doesn't fit in it. Especially if you've got work boots on or something like that, you're going to struggle to get your feet in there. So the first thing to do is get rid of the yellow foot cover. It's more of a nuisance than anything else. Now the pedal is a latching pedal. What that means is it's either on or off. So you're not actually using this pedal to control air pressure on the planishing hammer. All you're using it for is to control airflow. So that's the first thing, latching on, latching off. So you can kind of push it to the side. You don't need it directly where your feet are or where you're working. Put it over the side, tap it on, come over, use the hammer kind of thing, tap it off. So the next thing, as I said, is the air connections seem to be wrong on them quite a bit. The way I've got this one hooked up, they've got an A, a B and a P port on them. I blank off the A port, which is this one here, connect the air outlet that comes with the machine to the B port, and connect the air inlet to the P for Papa port. That way they don't seem to leak. When I did receive this one, it was leaking. If they're hooked up the wrong way, they will leak air back through the bypass valve. But if you hook them up this way, you get rid of the leak, and there doesn't seem to be any issues with them. If you are having a leak and they are connected this way, give us a yell, and we can see what we can sort out for you. So that's the first thing, is make sure your pedal's hooked up the right way so you don't have the leaky pedal. When they do leak, they tend to leak in the off position, and then when you put them in the on position, they send air through the machine and there's no leaking. It's only when you go back to the off position that they start leaking, and that's just because they've got a bypass valve on them. So you just got to make sure that they're hooked up the right way. So that's the first thing to check on them. The next thing that we've had feedback on is the clamping device coming loose on them. It can be a problem. It's a little bit tricky, not tricky, it's a little bit finicky to make sure they're done right. They come with 2 bolts on this side and then a hand lever on this side. What you want to do is take these 2 bolts out, put a little bit of Loctite in them, put the back in, get everything nipped up, let the Loctite set, and then you only want to be using the hand lever to adjust the tooling gap on your machine. Once you do that, you shouldn't have any issues with it. I haven't had any issues with this one, but it was an issue when we first got it out of the box. So just a little bit of Loctite on these 2 bolts. Make sure you're not crushing the air hammer. You just want them done up, nipped up tight, and then use the hand lever for actually tightening and loosening and everything on them. What else is there? I'll get on. We've had a bit of feedback about the bounce in the frame. I'll get onto that in a moment. I want to cover that separately. They come with a set of 6 dies. They are not CP size dies, so the shank on them is not 13/16, I think, 13/16 for CP. It's a proprietary size. It's the same size as pretty much all of the other aftermarket planishing hammers out there. So the other Woodward-Fab hammers, the Bailey hammers, the Eastwood hammers, all those sorts of aftermarket planishing hammers that might have an air hammer in them rather than a planishing hammer motor. It'll take those size of dies. It comes with a set of 6 dies. It's not a bad set, but there's probably most definitely a bunch of sizes in there that you are missing that you're going to want. Now I think they're an 1.5-inch die, so they're quite a big size, and that also matches the top die. The nice thing about them is that they use exactly the same tooling as the Woodward-Fab power hammer. So you can get, if you've got one of the power hammers, you can use, if I can get the tool out, you can use the smaller size tooling from the power hammer. That's the planishing hammer tooling, but they share the same size shanks on them. So you can use your tooling out of your power hammer on the planishing hammer. It's all interchangeable, which is quite a nice feature, especially if you've got both machines sitting next to each other. You can use tooling backwards and forwards. You can also use the bigger dies in the power hammer if you want. They'll go in. So that's just, it's kind of a nice little interchangeable thing. It would be nice if they had CP sized tooling, but this is what they have. So yeah, use your power hammer tooling if you've got a power hammer. If you don't have a power hammer, give us a yell. Make sure all of your other bolts on them are tight. I don't think they need Loctiting everywhere else, but just make sure they're nipped up when you do put it together. They come in a box in pieces when they're delivered, so you do need to do a bit of assembly. So just make sure everything's done up tightly. The tool post is semi-adjustable up and down. You want to change your tooling gap with the air motor, not with the tool post. They have 2 positions. One is your working position, and then one is your tool changing position. You can also rotate the tool post. And you've got to remember that your planishing hammer dies are round, they're curved. And if you want to work an edge off of your die along a sharp edge on your workpiece, you can rotate the tooling over so that the edge is coming into contact with the top die, and you can get a nice clean edge that way. What I've done, I'll post a photo in at this point, is I've put a couple of marks on the back here, 3 lines, and I can see where the 0 position is, and then rotate it and then bring it back if I want. Unless you're using flat tooling, it's not super critical if the tool post is not straight up and down. A radius is a radius at any point of the radius, so it doesn't really matter. But if you are using flat tooling, so linear stretching dies, things like that, you're going to want to make sure that your tool post is vertical or in line with your air motor. That's about it from the machine itself. So the other thing is they have a air adjuster at the top here. That's why they've got the latching pedal. So the pedal's just on and off, and you can adjust your air pressure from the valve up here, and that controls your beats per minute kind of thing, strike rate. You do need to get a pressure regulator and an oiler to use with them. So you can see on the wall, I've got one on the wall, just a mini oiler and regulator. I control my pressure from the machine from there. The oiler is just set to like almost the lowest setting. It's a really, really small trickle to get some oil through. Air hose goes from the wall to the pedal, from the pedal to the machine. And it works that way. So, what I wanted to have a chat about was some of the feedback where people have said the machine is too flexible, jumps around a lot. Now, it is a tubular style planishing hammer. It's not a rigid frame. It's a flexible frame. That is by design. It is one of those personal preference things. Some people like a semi-rigid frame. Some people like a 600-pound cast iron planishing hammer frame with absolutely 0 movement in it. It is a personal preference thing. I personally couldn't say if one's better than the other. I do like using this hammer. It will bounce around in certain conditions though, and the main situation where it will bounce around is if you're running too big a tooling gap. So what I'll do in a moment, I'll get the air compressor on. I've got it set to about 1/4 inch at the moment, which is a pretty exaggerated tooling gap, but I'm pretty sure that once I get some sheet metal in here, you'll be able to see that it bounces around a fair bit. So just give me a moment. Okay guys, I've got the machine ready, I've hooked up the foot pedal, the air's on, ready to go. One thing I just wanted to add quickly, the machine does come with 4 grub screw holes for the bottom die to keep it in place. For round radial tools, I don't use them. They do tend to vibrate loose after a while if you don't do them up tight. If you're using linear dies and you want to keep your orientation correct, you are going to have to use those grub screws, but I just leave them out during normal use. So as I said, we've got around a 1/4 inch gap on the top and bottom tooling here. For this machine, that's quite excessive, and I think that the bouncing that the machine gets is due to that gap, and it gets a bit of resonance between the up and down motion and the harmonics of the frame or something like that. I don't know the exact science behind it, but let's give it a go and see what happens. So I've got this bit of workpiece here. It's been beat up a bit on the power hammer with the thumbnail dies. Obviously needs a bit of tidying up. I've got the 6 1/4 inch radius die in here. This is the die that comes with the machine. I could have used the dies out of the power hammer. There's a 6-inch die, but the 6 1/4 is actually a good fit for this piece here. So let's see how we go. I'll probably cut the volume once we start up with this, just because it's a bit noisy. And then we'll get some volume back on once we get back to it. Just making the gap a little bit bigger. I can't seem to replicate it at the moment. So here we go. That was actually too far away. You can see at the moment, the machine's really got a bounce on it. It's actually not enough air pressure to keep the die going. It's just that the gap is way too big. So let me close that gap up. So I've closed up the gap. We are probably still a little big for my liking there. I'm going to close it up a little bit more. So we're down around 1/8 of an inch now, maybe a little bit bigger. Let's give it a go and see how the machine works there. You can hear with the gap closed up that the machine is going way faster now. I haven't changed the pressure setting on here. Pressure on the air compressor hasn't changed. I haven't changed the pressure on the regulator. Just by closing that gap up, the rate has become a lot faster. And it's kind of what you want to be hearing from this machine. So let's give it a go at this gap. So as you can see there, the machine's not bouncing around at all. It is doing a reasonable job of planishing. Obviously still need to spend a fair bit more time on this one, but there's the side that hasn't been touched. That was a very quick go on that side. It's coming up quite well. I'm just going to have a play around, and what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to increase my tooling gap just a little bit. I'm not sure if you heard, though you probably wouldn't have heard because I had the volume off, but the hammer did stall at one point when we hit one of the bigger lumps in here. That just tells me that the gap's too close. So we'll just open up the gap a little bit, but you don't need to go crazy on the tooling gaps with this machine. It's quite a powerful hammer, and I find that you can run nice close gaps. Just spend a little bit longer with the hammer. So let's just open up the tooling gap a bit. There we go. We'll give it another go and see how it goes here. And what I'm going to do in this run, I'm just going to play around with the pressure a bit, go slower, go higher, and just see that it should stay pretty stable, this machine. On that last run there, I just opened the tool gap up a bit more again, so up around that 1/4 inch. You can see that even at that 1/4 inch, it doesn't really jump around that much. It is a tubular frame. They are designed with some flex in them. So there's going to be some flex with the top head, but that's how the machine's meant to work. I think, you're meant to run this machine with a closer tool gap, and obviously probably at a higher pressure with the higher strike rate. Let me just check the regulator one sec. Yeah, so I'm running the machine at around 110 psi. You could probably even go higher than that if you want to get your rate faster. But definitely with the faster rates, the machine seems to work well. It's in tune, the frame's in tune with the strike rate at those higher rates. These higher rates, especially with the closer tool gap, you're going to get very good finishing planishing. I haven't done a lot of stretching on it yet, so I'll have to see how it works with that. But I think at least for that, planishing and finishing, they are, in my mind, a really good planishing hammer for the money. So yeah, just make sure your foot pedal's hooked up correctly. Make sure you've got a pressure regulator and oiler hooked up to it. You have to have an oiler, otherwise you're going to burn the motor out. Get your Loctite into these 2 screws so they don't come out. And yeah, just keep your tool gaps close with it and keep the strike rate up high. If you're worried about overworking your metal, close the tool gap up. Yeah, that's probably my one recommendation for them. All right, guys, have a good one.